Hey there, it's Brie, and today I'm going to be doing a video about junk journaling. Woo! Okay, so I'm going to be teaching you guys some different ways that you can make a junk journal, and all of them are relatively easy, but there are of course ones that are easier than others, but I'm going to go ahead and get into it to make this as quick as humanly possible. So, of course, one of the easiest ways to make a junk journal is to use a notebook or journal that already exists. So one option that you have is to take an old book. This is an old book that I purchased at a used bookstore. So this particular book is not one that I would turn into a junk journal. However, you could purchase an old book and turn it into a junk journal. So you could just use the pages that already exist in the book and journal on top of them, or even use them in parts of your journaling. So that is an option. I wouldn't recommend getting a book with this many pages, or if you did, to remove some of the pages or some of the signatures out of it. So that would be my suggestion for that. Another option is to use a notebook that already exists, like a composition notebook, for example. This is an old notebook that I have used to take church notes in. So you could repurpose an old notebook or purchase a new one and just mess up the pages by crumpling them, putting some paint or ink on them in some way to give them some color and texture. And then junk journal onto that. And it doesn't have to be a comp notebook, it could be any notebook, but these are the cheapest and most widely accessible around in the United States anyway, so it's the easiest example for that. So if you're wanting to do something where you're creating your own pages instead, then there is an option for a less junky looking journal, or you could do a more junky journal with it as well, where you take papers and you fold them in half and you create, and you seal one edge of it and you create some pockets by doing that. So for example, I'm going to show you with a not pretty paper. So, for example, you would take your piece of paper and fold it in half. And you could be more particular about this, of course. Then you would take an adhesive. I'm going to use this glue tape. It's Elmer's tape runner. But you could also use a glue stick, and that's a really inexpensive option, but this is a little quicker. Tutorial. So you would do this as close to the edge as you can and adhere that edge, and then you have this kind of like tunnely thing going on here, like that. And when you fold it in half to make a page out of it, it becomes a page that has pockets on the sides, right? So then, if you wanted to make it even more fancy, if you had a bigger piece of paper and not just like a regular 8 by 11, if you had like a 12 by 12 paper, then you could do this. You could do this with an 8 by, but your pages would be really small. But anyways, you can also fold it in. And when you do this, you don't want to fold it all the way to that crease like this. You wouldn't want to do that, because then it's going to be really hard to open and close it. So you leave just a little bit of space like so, and you could have pages that you open like this, and you have the pocket. It's going to be a smaller pocket, but keep in mind, if you use a larger piece of paper than what I'm using here, it's going to be bigger. So you can create pages like that, and then using thicker paper like this coloring book paper that's kind of like cardstock-ish. If you were to use cardstock, then you could stick these pages together and create a signature out of them, and that'd be your whole book, if you're wanting to make a smaller book. If you're wanting to make a bigger junk journal, this is probably not your best bet. Another option for creating a book out of pages without a cover per se is to use folders and just stick them one inside the other. And voila, you can use that as a junk journal and it would look pretty freaking cool. Like, I saw this and I was like, that is such a good idea. I'm gonna do that when my folders wear out. So another way that you could use the folders is to stick the pages on in backwards directions, like this. So you open the page this way and this way, so you can have this one long, so you can have this one super long page going on here, right? Alright, so first thing I did was I showed you 2 methods for using a book that is already bound to create your journal, right? So then our second tutorial, piece of the tutorial was one way to make pages. Now I'm going to show you another way to make pages. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is show you guys how to actually make a junk journal out of junk. Alright, this is basically like our second method of making pages. The first method is more of a pretty non-junky way. This is very much 100% using junk. Of course, you can use the previous method with junk and then decorate the pages as well, so that's also an option. But this is for pages that are going to go into a different book for binding purposes. Those pages would be, the previous ones were showing you what you would do if you wanted to make a book without a cover. So what you're going to want to do is gather your junk. Just mail, old notes and papers and whatever you have that is just a bunch of junk. What you're going to do is go through your junk and pick out the pieces that you want to use. So for time purposes, I'm just going to take this stack and show you how to make signatures really quickly. Old magazines, papers from taking notes and whatnot, papers from old notebooks, folders. This is a piece of a folder that I've already used the other pieces for, but you could just use any piece. And you can also use envelopes as well. I don't have an envelope on hand, so let me make one really quickly. Okay, so here is our faux envelope that I made. So what you're gonna do is, for a book, basically each of these is going to be a half a page, each piece in our stack that we have going. So to make that so, we need to fold each page in half. So I'm just going to do that. If you only have pages that are around the same size, you're going to want to fold in different directions. So some of them you're going to want to fold this way, and fold others this way. And with ones that are folded, if you have pages of the same size, then you can actually just create different sizes also by cutting down. So I could take 2 pages that are the same, like a regular piece of copy paper, and cut it to a random size and use each of those as 2 different sizes of papers. Another thing, if you have magazines that have perfume samples, those are really cool because they have this little flip out here. So that's another cool option. This is already folded in half because it's one spread page, so I'm just gonna leave it. I'm gonna do another perfume sample page, and I've already used a piece of this for something else, but I'm just gonna show you basically say this was a full page. Say this area right here is your full page for the perfume sample, and you want to fold it hamburger style. If you cut a little notch in the tab piece, like I'll show you down here. So say this is my full page, and say I want to fold it right here, and say this is one page and this is the other page, all right? So we have this little tab here because it's the perfume sample thing. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut a notch in here. So the reason that we just did that is so that when you have another page stuck in here and your book is closed, you go to open this page and you can pull this flap up, and then you can flip over and you can pull this one up too, right? And so you'll do the same thing with your envelopes as well. Okay, so any envelopes, if you have the top part that comes down, so here's our envelope, right? And this flap will, if I fold it in half, I won't be able to open and close it, right? So I need to cut a notch in here as well. So I just wanted to show you that for if you have anything that has a flap on it, then you're gonna have to cut away space for it to open and close. If it's going to be horizontal. If it's going to be a vertical flap, then you don't have to worry about it. So we have our pages that we've kind of folded up. So now we need to put them into a signature. So I'm going to basically decide what order I want my pages to look. Okay. So once you have your pages together, you can go and take them and flip through them. And decide if that's the order you want them in for sure. Okay. And keep in mind that you're not putting every single page that you're going to put in your book in this one signature. You're going to pick a few. So I'm going to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright, so this is one 8-page signature. So then I would make another 8-page signature. You can do however many pages you want. I usually would do around 6, honestly. So this is a little bit bigger than I normally would do, but that's fine. Still works. Alright, so then the next thing you're going to want to decide is for the short pages. For the short pages, are you going to want them lined up at the bottom, in the middle, at the top? Where do you want them lined up? That's going to be important in a minute. The next thing we're going to do is cut down our pages. I have this trim and score board that I'm going to use, but if you don't have that, you can definitely do this with scissors. It'll be a little bit harder, but I would measure out a line first and cut along the line. So now I'm going to go through my pages and I'm going to check and see if anything needs to be cut. So basically I'm just going to go through and say if I'm going to cut down the page or leave it as is. Okay, so you can use these scraps as extra pages because of the fact that most of them may have binding on them where they've been folded, or if they haven't been folded, you can go ahead and fold those. You can have little baby pages there. So you have options. You can add those into other signatures as well. Okay. So now that we have cut down our pages to whatever we want them to be, we need to stick these pages together so that they stay together, right? So to do that, we have some options. the easiest and quickest way is a long reach stapler, but not everyone has a long reach stapler. So if you don't have a long reach stapler, what are your options? Sew the pages together for demonstration purposes. So say this is my thread, all right? And say this is my signature in the center where I have created holes, or I'm gonna poke the needle through. So you're gonna wanna go through the page and then through this side, then come back through, and then you're gonna repeat that going the other direction. So now I've just come through the bottom forward, so I'm gonna push back through the middle, and then forward through the top. Like that. And you're going to do that for all the pages, okay? You can either use this method to adhere the signatures together, or to adhere the signatures completely to the book. So you could have a cover that you stitch through as well when you do this process. Okay, so I'm gonna actually separate this stack out into 2 separate signatures so I can show you 2 different methods of putting your signatures together. So now I have 2 separate signatures. I just literally split the signature in half so I can show you the different methods for binding in a minute. Okay. Alright, so say I'm going to do the staple method for creating the signatures. Basically what you'll do is you'll open up the signature and make sure everything is aligned how you'd like, as far as how high it is up. And then also make sure that everything is aligned perfectly on that folded crease, okay? Once you have everything lined up how you want, you'll grab your long reach stapler and slide the pages in carefully and line up the pages onto that seam there. So then you're going to staple at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom. Alright, and there you go, your pages are stuck together. So you can officially flip through your pages. We got this, and we got this cool little flip out there, so that's cool. Okay, so that is the quickest and easiest way to stick your pages together to do that. Okay, so you can sew the pages together. You can use that stitching method that I showed you to stick the pages together if you want to do that. But wait until I show you the binding and decide which binding you're going to do, because that will affect if you do the pages together first or after, which will make sense in a minute. Now you know that you can use bound books, you know how to make signatures, so now let's talk about how to put those signatures into a binding. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about binding. Now binding is really, really important because you're going to have all these signatures, but they're not going to be connected all together, and you need something to cover them so it's an actual book. One option is to take a folder and cut it down to size, or make your pages big pages. Okay, so you can put your pages in there like that, and this can be your cover. And you can have pages that are big like that, or you can cut down the folder to whatever size you want. So, option. You could also do the exact same thing with a thick cardstock to create a cover. Just fold it in half and make your cover that way. Another thing you could use for a cover is an old book where you've cut out the pages. This is an example of one that I've done this with. Ignore this, it needs to be covered up. But all you do is you cut out the pages. Now, how to do that? How you'll cut out the pages is, let me get you zoomed in here so you can see. If you look at the book right here, you can see, if I open it, you can see even better. You can see this space right here. That is because this is thread bound, okay? So what you can do is you can cut along here and where this paper is. And that, as you can see, that is all that is holding the book together, is that piece of paper. So you can just take an X-Acto knife and cut down the side of that page on both sides. The other side is done with the paper too. And just take the pages right out and not even mess up the pages and just get the cover. So that is how you would remove the pages from the book, because most books are thread bound so that they have that lie flat ability. So that's an option if you wanted to do one like this where it's a legit book cover. Or if you don't want to destroy a book and you want to use something a little more sturdy than cardstock, next option is Cinnamon Toast Crunch, or basically any cardboard box. And you can actually make a cover yourself. This is an example of one I have made out of a cardboard box. It was a candy box, obviously, because it's so small, but that's an option too. So what you're gonna do is either take an X-Acto knife, a box cutter, or scissors. I recommend an X-Acto or scissors. The best part about using a box is the fact that it already has this nice big spine for you to work with if you want to use that. So what you're gonna do first is cut away the flaps. I'm going to do this mostly with scissors because I feel like most people are not going to have an X-Acto knife. So now that we have both the top and bottom completely done, we're going to do the side. So I'm going to turn the side and do the same thing. And voila! You suddenly have a book cover. Crazy, right? Now, of course, you probably don't want General Mills as your cover. You probably want to make this pretty, so you could cover this up completely. You could take some cardstock or even scrapbook paper and cut it down to size, glue it on there, or glue it on there and then fold the edges over. So then you have a cover that is less ugly. And then once the glue dries, you can flip this and adhere this down. Do the back. Do the same thing on the back. And then for the spine itself, you could use some tape. You could use another piece of paper. You could use a ribbon. That would be really pretty to use a ribbon and go over the spine. So basically, very easy to decorate it, but it is more sturdy than just using that straight cardstock, right? Okay. So then, for this part right here, you'll just take another page and you would cut this down to size. And you would cut it down here probably. But yeah, that's what you'd do there. If you wanted to use this method, of course, you can cover it however you want. You could use gift wrap and stuff like that. I'll cover all different methods of covering, perhaps in a separate video. but just to give you an idea that you can cover that up pretty easily, so you don't have to have General Mills going on here. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is putting your pages in the binding. Say you want your pages to be sewn into your book where you can see the stitching on the spine. You're going to take your book, you're going to create holes in the book, tiny little holes. Then you're going to go down to the middle. Then you're going to go down to the bottom. When you do this, you want to take your time and you want to use a ruler to create straight lines. So you'll line up the edge of your ruler with the edge of your book. Draw a straight line down and then put 1, 2, 3, measuring out where the halfway mark is, okay? So I'm not going to do all of that. You get the idea. And then take your pages. You're going to line them up. And then you're going to poke your holes into your pages too. Matching the length, width, height, matching the distance for your book. As you're putting your holes in your pages, try to keep them as small as possible. So then you're going to do that same method to stitch your pages into your book. Okay? And if you do that method right onto your book, then you will see the stitching here. You can cover it up by putting paper over it, but it will have texture to it as well, so it will be harder to cover. If you don't want to see the seam, the easiest way to do that is to use another piece of cardboard or a piece of fabric. If you use fabric, then you're going to be able to get what's called lay flat, where the pages lay open. Some books, like some notebooks like the Leuchtturm, are intended to have lay flat, so you can turn to any page and it will lay pretty flat. The reason it's able to do that is because of that thread binding. This junk journal is glue bound rather than thread bound, so it does not have a lay flat binding. As you can see, you can't just lay it out. If you want the lay flat binding, what you're going to do is use a fabric to do the exact same hole poking method and attach the pages to the fabric. If you don't care about the lay flat, you can just use an extra piece of cardboard. For this tutorial, I'm going to use the hole punch, so everything is more visible and a little bit quicker. However, I would not recommend using a hole punch for the method. So I just wanted to come in here and tell you guys the reason that I punched in those extra 3 holes at the top is to remind me to tell you that you're gonna have this one binding piece and you're gonna make rows and rows and rows and rows of those holes that you make. And then from those rows, you're going to line up your signatures and use 1 row per signature and put them all into that same one binding piece. So I wanted to clarify that all of your signatures are going to be sewn in straight rows. And I'll insert a picture right here so you can see what that will look like when they're all sewn in together. The image shows what it would look like on the back side of the binding piece or the outside of your cover, depending on if you're using a binding piece or stitching right into the cover. I also wanted to tell you that if you're using this particular method, then you're going to want to make sure that the knot is on the back side where your binding piece is, so that you can't see it once you put it in the book. Okay. So another thing about this method is the fact that you'll have this knot, which if you're going to do the interior binding piece, then you'll want to reverse what I did for the very first stitch, going the opposite way through. And so then you would put every single signature onto this strip here. Then you would take the first and last pages and you'd glue them down like so. And then the last page as well. And that's what would hold your book in, is those pages. Just like the book I showed you earlier. Right? So that's one method. Or you can glue your pages in. So to do that, I take tacky glue and fill up this area here completely. Right. Then stick the pages into the glue, close the book once you have all the pages glued in, and I like to put a clamp right here while you're going, and while the glue is still wet, you're going to want to go into the part here and push those pages back in there and make sure that it gets saturated. You can take any long object like a paintbrush or something and push that down into the glue to make sure the full page gets saturated in the glue. And you, of course, do all of your signatures. So keep in mind that this is displaying one signature being glued in. You would have your signatures go all across from this edge, leaving just a touch of space, and from the back edge. And it would be the same thing if you were to do this method. You would go from the front edge to the back edge of the binding, leaving space to give flexibility. So those are the two binding methods that I have for you guys on putting pages into a book. You can use either of these methods for any of the covers that I showed you. You could also staple the signature completely into the book if you're going to use cardstock. But keep in mind that if you're using something that is folded singularly and putting a large stack of pages in there, stapling that, and then doing the same thing over and over again, you're not going to have room. So you're going to want to fold your cardstock so that you have two seams, so that you have a thick binding area. So let me show you really quickly. I'm going to show you with this trim and scoreboard how it works, but if you don't have that, I'll show you how that would work too. Okay, so I can take this right here and mark it at any distance. Like that. And that gives me, all I have to do is pick it up and crease it along those scores, and voila. See? So instead of just being regularly folded in half, I have this whole width there. Okay? And of course you would want to measure out the halfway point first. So what you would want to do for measuring purposes is you'll want to measure out the halfway point which, because this is 8.5 by 11, is going to be, which is going to be like right here. Okay, and then you're going to measure out. Then you're going to decide how wide you want your binding to be, and you're going to measure out that width from that center point. So you have your little centery dot here. Let me use something. There's our center dot, right? Okay. And so then you'll measure out from that point whatever that width is. So say I want 1 inch, so I'm going to line up the 1/2 inch there, and then so I need a 1/2 inch on each side from that center. If you're not using a trim and scoreboard to do it, then you would do the same measuring method. Down here. So 4 1/4 is going to be our halfway, since this is 8.5. So then we would go, let's see, 1/2 inch. No, 1/2 inch I mean, and then a 1/2 inch. Right, I'm going to do the same thing a little higher. So 4 1/4, 1/2 inch to 1/2 inch. And then same thing at the bottom. So 4 1/4, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. Okay? So then you'll take your ruler and connect the dots, and then you'll lift up your paper and fold it into your ruler, like so. Pull your ruler away. Y'all, I am so sorry about the background noise. The weather was being weird, and my dog and my family was home. And then crease it. And then if you don't have a bone fold, you can take the edge of your scissors, as long as it's really dull, and you're just gonna go along the interior of the crease basically, and then use the edge. Go along the edges of the page, or you can use the back side to do this part. Like that. And then you have a perfectly measured book cover. So that is how you can get around wanting to use cardstock or cardboard that doesn't have that binding already prepared for you. So I hope this video has been helpful to you guys in your attempts to make a junk journal, and I will be back soon with more junk journaling things, and also more planner things and other exciting videos. So make sure to check back next week on Tuesday for another video that is going to be a different type of journaling that you've seen before. So comment below what you guess that it is going to be. And thank you guys so much for watching and bearing with me. I know this was a long video, so if you made it all the way to the end, then you're my best friend ever. And so yeah, without any further ado, peace out, Bear Scouts.
About your worries and your stress. I mean it, bare necessities. That's why a bear can rest at ease with just the bare necessities of life. Yeah, bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. About your worries and your stress.